Good morning. Welcome to Freeway Bible Study for today. I think it's the 13th day of April 2018. My name is Kurt Bell. I'm your host for Freeway Bible Study. I'm a non-believer. I don't believe in the existence of God, or heaven or hell, or soul or spirits, or any of that, although I do enjoy studying, reading, studying, and talking about and reflecting upon what's in the Bible and other holy books. So, here we go, making our way through the Bible chapter by chapter. Today we're on Genesis 32. This is where Jacob wrestles with God. In this chapter we're continuing to follow Jacob, who has been spent the last 20 years in the company of his uncle Laban and their families, basically in order to escape the anger, wrath, and vengeance of his brother Esau. You may remember some time back, Jacob cheated Esau out of his birthright, Esau being the older son. And Esau was quite upset about it and vowed to kill Jacob first chance he gets. So, not waiting around for that to happen, Jacob, being basically under the guise of trying to get a non-Canaanite bride, was sent by his father and his mother and his own volition away from Sheba, where they were living, out to the land of his father's family. And so out there he had a long, experience of, getting married to two women, his uncles, basically his cousins, and I think he had 11 or 12 sons and one daughter, and it was a real good time. But then he had to leave, and to come back. And that was a whole story in of itself. Laban, his uncle, wasn't too happy about those circumstances. And so in this chapter we find that finally, in the last chapter, Jacob and Laban have mended their ways, so to speak, and off they go. This kind of set up a dividing line between the two of them, between Laban and Jacob, so that they would not cross that line and harm one another in the future. And so Jacob's on his way. And now as he's approaching Beersheba, which is where Esau lives, he sends forward an emissary from his camp, I believe it was a couple of young men, he said, to talk to Esau and let them know he's coming. And the emissaries come back, and but I'm missing something. Something happened right there. Oh, I remember what I'm missing. Right, as he's setting out, there's a little tiny bit right at the front that I'd missed the first time I'd read the Bible through. And that is that, because it's a real small little bit, it's easy to miss. And I tried to put a little bookmark in my head to remember to comment on it, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I remembered. Right there at the start of the chapter, Jacob, as he's heading out, he comes upon they got a police officer. So he's got the blue light back there. What is basically it's like a siren that's kind of falling apart. He comes upon a camp of angels. Can you just picture such a thing? I guess the angels came down from heaven, a whole bunch of them, and they set up a camp along the way. And Jacob actually runs into them. He doesn't actually say what he says to them or why. We don't know why the angels are there, but nevertheless, he says, "I've found a camp of angels." I had to pause, and when I finally realized what was happening, and just kind of paint a mental picture of what that must look like. Were they all like standing, or I don't mean to be silly, but I'm literally trying to piece together, share with you what the mental image that came to mind, because watch out, guy, Mr. Fast Prius, the police officer right ahead. Trying to picture what that must have been like. Are they like standing around a couple of tents and a campfire and some angels in long white robes and with wings? Are they roasting sweenies and making s'mores? And one of them's playing a harmonica. I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure that they were men they look like men, but Jacob simply knew that they were angels. Interesting. But can you imagine if I went out to the desert and came back and told you, wow, I found a camp of angels out there? I don't think you guys would be quite willing to believe me. So, and I'm glad that would be a good thing if you didn't believe me. Oh wait, why am I getting over here? I know why, because I'll go over here. So, anyway, so we passed the camp of angels and on we go. And remember, Jacob had sent forward a couple of young men to go alert Esau that Jacob was on his way. And the young men come back. I think they were young men. And they tell Esau, they tell Jacob, we met Esau, and he is now coming behind us with 400 men. Now that doesn't sound very good, right? I mean, that sounds like a war party, because you think about it, back in the day, times are tough. I mean, you're living on the edge of existence for the most part. Now for Esau, if he has good, honorable intentions with Jacob, he's going to just send out a small band. Or maybe it's a defensive 400. Maybe he doesn't trust Jacob. But let's say he's not worried that Jacob's going to attack him. He'd take a small band, because every one of those men, they're taking them away from their work, right? I mean, they've got households and families to maintain, slaves to oversee, crops and fields to take in and maintain. It's busy guys. So if you take them away, it's going to take some time to go out there and, a couple of days. They're going to want some payment. So, so Jacob's concerned that they may be after vengeance and plunder is probably well-placed concern. So Jacob really, I'm imagining now he hears that there's 400, Esau plus 400. Now remember, Esau is the hairy guy, right? He he was the rough and the hunter, the great bowman back in the day, where Jacob preferred to lounge around in the tents, I imagine, with the women, right? So we have kind of the soft Jacob and the field-hardened hunter warrior of I don't know if he was a warrior, but he was certainly a hunter, Esau. So now Jacob is deathly scared. It almost comes through the pages. It's like, whoa, 400. Oh no! So the first thing he does is he divides his camp into two. So first thought that went through my mind was, divide and conquer, or divide and be conquered, right? Good call, Jacob. And I'm stunned that this is happening, because we know, like his grandfather before, he's met God, and God has promised him that he's his chosen. I think if I had a convincing experience that I had actually met God, and God promised to amplify my house like the sands of the sea. I've said this before, way back in Abraham. I would stride through life with a level of confidence that would just be stunning. It would seem reckless. Yet no such case. With Abraham, 2 generations before, though he'd met God 5 times and been promised a covenant 4 times, Abraham didn't trust that God had his back. Now likewise, Jacob as well. And even Isaac, his father, Abraham's son. He didn't trust God either. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lied to Abimelech about who his wife really was, not his sister. And so he divides the camp into 2, and they're big camp. He's crossed over. Think about this. He's crossed over the Jordan 20 years ago. He crossed over the Jordan with just his staff. He didn't have anything else. And now he's crossing back over the Jordan 20 years later. 2 wives, 11 sons, 1 daughter, and a household with slaves and men slaves, female slaves, sheep, cattle, oxen, camels, the whole kind of so big they can be divided into 2 and still be enormous. So he divides them into 2 with a plan that if Esau arrives and smites the one camp, then the other camp can flee. So he's kind of, protecting himself. He'll cut his loss with the first camp if necessary, and maybe survive with the second. We don't know if Jacob's plan was to linger with the second, or just how that was going to play out. So that happens, and then the next thing. Hold on. Okay. Now the next step. So he's kind of imagining he's kind of like planning for a battle of sorts, right? So that's the first thing. He divides it into 2. The next thing he does is he prepares a gift for Esau. And the gift is going to consist of livestock and cattle, which are the currency of the day, right? So it's an enormous number. It's like 400 female sheep and 100 male sheep and like 100 goats and 20 female goats and 20 male goats. The ratio is such that there's, a goodly a number of female versus a smaller number of male, because that's just the way that they to keep the machinery going, that you don't need so many males. And then and then the same thing, some proportion we did goats, sheep, I think camels, and something else, but I remember there weren't any chickens. So he divides it up nicely, and then he gives some servants to oversee the flocks, and he tells them, I want you to now dispatch towards Esau in waves. I want you to put some distance between each flock, and when you arrive to Esau, I want you to tell him this. When he comes to you and he says, who are you, and where are you going, and whose flocks are these? You are to say to him, these are my lord Jacob's, which he sends forward to you as a gift. And then you are to say, and lo, he comes behind us. And he reminds them all to say that to remind Esau that Jacob is coming up by the rear. And the idea is that each of these successive waves of gifts should quell Esau's anger, should he be angry. Right? So now he's got up his second line of defense. It's a fully defensive strategy taking here. One, dividing the camp so that they won't all get smitten at once, and two, setting up waves of gifts. These sheep, goats, camels, and the like that are being sent on their way. An incredible number. This is astonishing number of animals. Apparently, he's become quite wealthy. No wonder Laban was so upset. He's taken all that away from him. And next he takes it right at the Jordan. This happens. He's on the east side of the Jordan River. Finally, he's left with just his small band of himself and his 2 wives and the 2 slave girls, and he's got his 11 sons. No mention of his daughter. He got that one daughter. Kind of forgot about her, I guess. And he says, I want all of you to go across the river now, and I will remain behind. So it's kind of a beautiful imagery, huh? You can just see him in a defensive posture, setting up positions of dividing the camp, setting off wave after wave of gift offering in the form of the cattle and the sheep and the like, and then finally separating himself from his immediate family, sending them across the Jordan being kind of the crucial point of passage over. And then now he's left alone, standing on the east side of the Jordan. Does this inspire us, or does this paint a picture of a cowardly man who's putting all the innocents, including the women, the children, and the animals, ahead of himself as a buffer between himself and a potentially wrathful brother? I tend to think that's not what it is, but this does not display a lack of courage on his part, on Jacob's part, but is indeed is rather an illustration of his keen understanding and a good strategic and tactical plan. Right? Because after going through all these waves and waves of things, and it's not likely that Esau is going to come upon these people and these animals and kill them. He's certainly not going to kill the animals, the gifts, right? Because for one, that's plunder, and if that's what he was after in the first place, he's going to keep it. Why kill the slaves that are doing it? Just take them in as slaves as well. So he's basically calming down the tempers of Esau and their men, mainly Esau, so that finally when they get to Jacob's got nothing left. He's just standing there all alone, basically having put everything he has before the mercy of Esau, who is his brother after all. Who is his brother? And then he thinks that maybe then he'll be able to be okay. And also, you remember, he passed over this. There's some beautiful beauty to the story. He passed over the Jordan with nothing but his staff, and he's about to pass over the Jordan again with nothing but his staff. Finally, there's one last interesting bit that happens, very interesting. As night comes, Jacob is there on the east side of the Jordan, and begins to wrestle with a man sometime in the night. And this wrestling match goes on all night until dawn. And remember, Jacob at this time is in his 90s, right? So he's no young man. So this is a pretty big deal that he's wrestling all night with somebody. It doesn't really explicitly say that it's God, although there's enough clues that we can think that's the case. At first I thought maybe he's wrestling with an angel, maybe one of the angels from the camp we saw at the beginning of the chapter, but I think we can safely say that this is God. There's enough clues in there. I don't remember all the details, but there's enough clues. But as dawn approaches, the man or the deity, God, who Jacob is wrestling with, actually begs Jacob, and I don't use beg like in a pleading manner, but in kind of just a formal request to let him go. And by the way, the man that he was wrestling with was trying to defeat Jacob. At one point, he reaches in and he touches the hollow in his thigh, which I think is just that one part just by the outside of the leg there, and he touches it in such a way that it kind of makes Jacob a little bit lame. We don't know if it's going to be permanently lame or just for a moment if he just injures him. And I don't think this is not the same reference that happened with Abraham or way back. Remember when Abraham happened and Abraham took one of his servants and made him, I'm pretty sure that he made him rest his hands on his testicles to swear an oath, right? And the idea that this imagery being that even if Abraham, because he was an old age, died, that he was swearing upon the seed of Abraham, that the oath that he would swear would carry on beyond Abraham's death. So I think that was a symbolic thing there. I don't think this is the same thing. God was trying to basically not disable, but stop, overtake Jacob. And the fact that he was able to do so in a touch means that this entity, this man, this God, this angel, whatever it was merely toying with Jacob, right? Clearly there was no, and he's fighting with a man in his 90s after all anyway. This was no contest. So there's symbolic stuff in here. Anyway, he says, release me. And Jacob says, first, before I release you, give me your blessing. And the man, deity, God perhaps, says, you will no longer, excuse me. Pardon me. The deity says, tell me your name. And he says, my name is Jacob. And the deity says, God says, you will no longer be known as Jacob. You are now Israel. So there we have the establishment of Israel. Similar to the way that God changed Abram's name to Abraham, 2 generations earlier. So now Jacob is now Israel. And when this happens, that's the end of the little fight, and the God, man, angel, deity disappears before the sun comes up. I did a little reading and learned that in the Mesopotamian area and in Hittite mythology, there are plenty of instances of water deities. I remember right at the edge of the Jordan River here where this is happening. Now, the water deities tend to prefer to be active at night. And I remember the same thing in some Asian cultures as well. The water deities liked being active at night. And this, if that's, there may be some connection there given the fact that this deity seemed to not want to continue wrestling after daybreak. But that's speculation. But we may be seeing some connection to more ancient Mesopotamian, Hittite, Canaanite mythology. So now at this point we're left. That's the end of the story. And Jacob Israel is standing there on the east bank of the Jordan with everything that he has set before him. His brother Esau going through wave after wave of gift offering, and we don't know what's going to happen. So this is where we got a real cliffhanger. And this is Friday, so I won't be doing another Bible study until next week. So I guess I'll end like the old 20s and 30s serials, So what lays in store for our hero? Discover next time on Freeway Bible Study, when we learn the fate of Jacob and his wives and his slaves and his animals, and what will be the mercy of Esau. Until next time, that's it for Freeway Bible Study. Have a good day and a great life. Bye-bye.